Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. Today we're talking about play styles.
Yes. Play styles, I think, are good for party cohesion and making sure that the game progresses for a long time if that's what you want to play. It helps the game last longer, a campaign last longer without having less issues than normal. Play styles are good because it kind of, if you think about it, makes you understand that not everybody goes into the game having the same mindset of what the game is about. Different people have different play styles where they're there for different reasons. And there's certain games and certain types of games that affect what kind of game they want to see at the table. And if everybody's on the same page, more or less, then it's a better party cohesion as a player cohesion between players, and therefore makes it easier for a long campaign to make it to the end.
Okay.
Along those lines is what kind of play styles can we all group people with? Of course, people.
Do you mean games?
Games, yes. What kind of games do people like, or how they like to play, and what they want out of a game? And if you can more or less understand, and basically everybody in the group agree that that's what you want to play, and that's the play style you want to play, then, like I said, it'll make it easier for you to have a full campaign.
I think it might be a little more subtle than that. I don't think that people really understand what their play style is.
Oh, there's doubt. It's just people just play the way they play. There's all kinds of factors that would play into how you play. It could be how old you were when you started playing, what game you first started playing at, when you first started playing, whether you started playing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, in the 2000s. All these factors, your age, all these factors will affect your play style and how and what games you like to play. We're just grouping them into very general groups.
Wide groups,
Very general. Nothing is ironclad. People will jump from one type of play style to another, and the way we categorize them is by putting them in under headings of the kind of games that people play, because the kind of games that you play will kind of tell me, or the GM, that what your play style is.
Also, so you should say what the play styles are, or at least start with one of them. But I would say that going through all of these, I think that you and I play all of these styles in one way or another.
Yeah, it depends on the game.
What people want to play.
And it depends on the game. A lot depends on the game. That's why when you first start playing and you decide a game to play, that's going to have a huge impact on your play style, because some games
aren't conducive
for certain play styles. Exactly.
So what's the first one?
So I just want to say that this is totally subjective, and obviously these are just our personal opinions. That has nothing to do with, there's no ironclad in anything on this subject. So the first one is like the classic play style, right? This is very beginning of D&D, 1970s to the early 80s, and we're talking about games like, of course, original D&D, AD&D,
Tunnels and Trolls, which
I think it was the second fantasy role-playing game that came out. I think it was very popular. It's still very popular today. I think they're in the 6th or 7th edition of Tunnels and Trolls, around for a long time. So what does this entail, this classic style? Well, it's a style that came from a war game background, with people who played war games kind of meandered into this thing called fantasy role-playing, and it was based on a very tactical rules. People who played miniature games were very,
still are,
and are very tactical, right? So the game itself is a tactical game
when it comes to the battle, right?
Right, and the play style in this one is very interesting because it's the character versus the environment, right? And the GM in this case is like a referee, right? They have the rules, and the players have the rules, and the players are trying to, I wouldn't say outsmart the GM, but they're trying to figure out how to beat the situation or how to solve the situation within the rules, and the GM, in this case, the game master, is more like a referee. He's there to adjudicate the rules as the best as they can. This really describes original D&D, AD&D, and other games of that sort.
I would put in Traveler.
Traveler, of course, yeah. Traveler, space opera, the same thing.
The systems are very crunchy.
And they tend to be very country. And another thing is, like, for space opera, it also came from a miniatures war game, a miniatures science fiction game called Space Marine. In fact, it's the same company that published Space Marine, the miniature game, published Space Opera, which is Fantasy Games Unlimited. And in fact, if you look at the background of Space Marines, Space Opera incorporates that into its science fiction role playing game. The different factions and the different even the different armaments and tanks and stuff like that. There's a lot of rules about that in your science fiction game. Where when I was a kid, 12 or 14, looking at this, I'm like, what is all this tank stuff? It didn't seem to make sense because they talked about the strength of the tanks and the crewmen of the tanks, how much crew.
This was in Space Opera?
Space Opera, yeah, in the rules. And then my brother bought Space Marine somewhere, and that's why I'm like, oh, look, it's all the same groups of people.
They just moved it to space.
Well, yeah. Well, this is like the original classic style of play in which everybody who first started playing, this is the style that they encountered.
This is the style that a lot of people, I've heard the term called grognard. Grognard?
That's right.
And I didn't always understand what it meant, but I think that's what they mean. A person that is like, they like these kind of rules. But a lot of people like these kind of rules, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, a lot of people do like them, but a lot of people do not like them at all, right? And that's where we're making the distinction. So, like, if you're trying to gather up a group of people and they're grognards, as you say, in the group, and they want to play a nice, military campaign and blah, 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 and then you get somebody who's a little bit younger and has watched Critical Role, and they're like, well, what's all these stats
What are we
about,
doing?
What are these stats about weapons? Why do I have a list of 150 weapons I can choose from? Doesn't make sense. Moving on, right? Next is
a traditional one, right?
Traditional. What's the difference between traditional and classic? Well, there's just subtle differences here. Here, where the term storyteller starts coming into play instead of referee, which is basically what we called the dungeon master or the GM back then. And these people who like these games are playing for the setting. They like.
So what are some of the traditional ones?
They like playing in worlds that are already set up. They like running games based on modules. This is like when AD&Ds really started pushing out a lot of stuff, a lot of modules and a lot of stuff like that. And then people were like, "Oh, this is the way you play. You buy a module, you run the module, and that's where we get our fun from."
I think that I took from traditional. I took more like the GM is kind of like telling a story. He gives you the information, and you go with it.
Right.
Right. And he's like, but he has more control about where everything goes. Because I think this is like before the idea of player agency, or not that the idea hasn't always been there, but before it was codified as player agency.
The lexicon of official RPGs.
So it's like the old style where, the GM goes, okay, this is you meet in a tavern, this is someone gives you a mission and go. Right,
exactly. So we're talking about, a lot of times these games are a bit more, I would say, tactical combat versus miniature combat, right? There's a little bit more leeway as to how you represent the battle. Also,
the players get to role play, right?
Right. And I think what games are like this, I would say, like Starfinder, because it's kind of it's kind of a tactical game, but there's so many elements of the world that come out and play that it changes it from like original D&D, right?
Well, what about would you consider third edition to be?
Yeah, I think third edition will probably fit. I thought you said fifth for some reason. No, you're right. I think third edition will fit into this also. It's very tactical, but at the same time, there's all these elements that bring a character to life.
There's a lot of games that came out in the 80s. I would think would be. I was thinking like, would GURPS fit into this category of traditional?
Yeah,
Because
I think so.
because it came out. It had it's like a generic, but it has all the elements of ways to play tactical, right?
Yes, I mean you're still playing. Well, you are playing on a hex grid instead of
Yes.
squares, and there's that. But it opens up the characters to be able to create anything you want and play any kind of character
Right.
you want.
You're not stuck with a wizard that's going to die at first level
Correct.
because they don't have enough hit points or something like that.
You can make a wizard, but who's a little bit hardier and maybe doesn't throw as powerful spells, but with experience and gameplay, you can get there. Of course, GURPS, it all depends on the level that you want to start at, and that depends on how many points you give the player. You give them 100 points, they're kind of almost normal. You give them 150 points, they're very gifted, they're talented. You give them 200 points, and they're bordering on
Heroic.
heroic, right? Yeah. So
Well, and I was just trying to think of games that came out in the 80s.
Gamma World came out.
The Gamma World was one that I was thinking about. Also, what about Paranoia?
Paranoia came out.
Top Secret.
Top Secret.
Those and those were different styles than. Oh, and Dark Conspiracy.
Dark Conspiracy came out in the 90s.
Oh, it did.
91,
Okay.
right? Well, I don't know. We talked to Lester Smith about it, and he created it pretty quickly because they wanted something to come out quick. Not everything's set in stone, right?
Right.
The 80s didn't end in 1989, December 20.
I was trying to think of games that are kind of crunchy, but they have more of a role-playing element and a lot of modules that came out, like you
Right.
were talking about. And I know Paranoia and
Yes.
Top Secret and Gamma World, those are all ones that I played when I was a teenager.
Right. I think you're right. I think those all fit in this style. Also, a lot of times these are games that are easily one-shots.
Yeah.
Because if you're running a published adventure, you read the module or you read the adventure, the module, we call them modules back then in D&D, and you are playing that module, and when the module's done, we would just go off to another module. Not that we played in all the modules back then or published adventures, but most people that I know of that played back then, they would move from one module to another, and whether they were really connected,
It wasn't so important.
right.
It was that you were having fun and
Just
playing, right?
We're moving from the 80s. A lot of this timeline stuff can kind of leaches into other eras, and even some newer games could be kind of throwbacks to that era.
And we'll get to those, but I was going to say that just because these are games from the 70s or 80s doesn't mean they're not played to this day, right?
Oh, no, yeah.
I mean,
people still playing original D&D and AD&D today.
Because they like that system, they know it, and they don't want to learn anything else.
Well,
Or they
really
just really like
yeah,
it.
exactly.
They've learned the other ones and go, no, I want to go back to this one. Because that's the way when you have a group likes a certain game or a certain genre, and they have the rules that they like, that doesn't mean they might play other things, but they always want to go back. Or some of them want to go back to that original one that they were playing because that's their favorite one.
Yeah, well, I know some friends who won't play D&D anymore because they go, well, we played, and they're older, like me. They're like, I don't know if I would call them grognards, just call them old, Morgan, but Shannon. But they won't play D&D anymore because they're like, oh, we've been playing D&D for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and
I don't want to do it.
I want to play anymore. And it's just personal note, I mistook that for saying that they didn't want to play any fantasy role playing games, but they said, "Oh no, that's not true. I just don't want to play D&D." And what has happened is, for them, D&D has gone from maybe they would play a D&D game if we ran that. Starting in third edition, the players became very heroic and very
too
powerful.
heroic. So it's not gritty enough.
Yeah, and the progression, you're already start. Honestly, I would say characters from D&D's third all the way through fifth and the new one, 5.5, they're really starting off characters at like third level.
Even though it says first level.
Even though the first
well,
level.
because it is a heroic game, right?
Compared to first edition,
yeah.
where you just roll your hit points. And if we rolled a 1, oh,
Because everybody wants to be Legolas or Aragorn or.
But not
or-
everybody. Not everybody. Some people want that
if
struggle.
if you're playing D&D, most likely that's what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, when I play D&D, I want to be a heroic.
You don't want to
character.
be a peasant that's
No.
wallowing in the
I
mud.
want to either be a fighter or a sorceress,
Yeah, the
and I want
pitchfork made
I
of
want to be
wood.
the one that's taking care of stuff here.
Made a pitchfork made of wood. Okay, let's go.
No, that's a different game, and I'm not sure I want to play it.
Let's go get those rats in the cellar. I remember we played this one game. We went after rats in the cellar, and we got our asses kicked.
Was that when Jim was running?
Well, we did do that, but we were playing 5th edition, so we stomped on them. No, this was Jean-Luc. He was running. He called it the low level party. They were like 0 level characters, right? And so we're like Jim's game. We went into a basement because
That's where rats are, supposedly.
That's where the rats were, and indeed the rats were there.
Just so you know, in San Jose, the rats live in trees, and they go into your attics, not your basements, because we don't really have basements.
Right, that's true. Back to play styles. Traditional, a lot of published adventures, a lot of settings that people like to want to play in. For example, I did mention Dragonlance, but other ones are also in the mix. And these are like classic settings that people like from books that they've read or movies that they've seen.
And then
the 90s show up. Now, I must have been absent in the 90s.
No, you weren't. You were just still playing D&D.
I still playing D&D. So this is the era of World of Darkness, Vampire. Vampire gets on the scene, and it blows a lot of people's minds.
Well, I think that what it did is that it allowed people that were teenagers then, right?
Sure.
Or even in their 20s.
Yeah.
It opened up the idea that they didn't have to play. They could be like the way they felt, right? They could play with their feelings.
Emotional.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think
they didn't have to be heroic. They could be they could be like, and also there was a series of vampire books out then.
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean,
and a movie.
Of an interview with a vampire. Yeah. And vampire has always been a very, in popular culture has been, movies have been coming out since the 50s or whenever they started making vampire movies. And there's always been some vampire movie that comes out like every decade, right? And some of them have a huge impact and some of them not so much.
But it had an effect on role playing because it became more a story kind of.
Definitely it's all about
the story.
Because the vampires, sure you're playing a vampire, so you're pretty powerful as it is, right?
But it's about court intrigue and
it's about relationships and stuff like that. So I won't say which podcast, but there was a guy who played in a podcast who had a podcast with another guy, and he was really and he talked about it that he was really into Vampire the Masquerade and that blah 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 that he did, and that he would wear eyeliner and stuff like that. To me, I don't know how old I was in the 90s. It wasn't
you
that
were in
old.
your 20s.
In my 20s, I wasn't that into that scene, the emo scene, I guess I would call it. But some people were, and it really attracted a lot of younger players, and attracted a different way of playing. And I think that's where this World of Darkness, especially, and later Fate and Apocalypse World are all these games that are about evoking a certain type of feeling and not necessarily just about the setting. Because the setting about vampires in this secret society trying to control the world or whatever, that's not what the game is about. The game is about personal relationships between the players and with NPCs who may be above or below them in some sort of hierarchy of rank. And I think that type of play style is a lot different than, let's say, D&D.
Yeah.
Or space opera, where you're in it for the action, you're solving problems,
you're being sent on a mission.
You're sent on missions. And in this case, the missions can be the adventures are much different. There's different pacing. There's different reasons to go on a mission. And I think this one really changed a lot of people's concept of what a role-playing could be. And it evolved it.
I wouldn't say changed. I would say that it evolved the concept more.
Yeah, and another thing is that it really makes the players drive the story, right? Because I was in a werewolf game with some guy from the convention, and all his friends were really into this game, Werewolf. We had never played. We thought it'd be cool to play werewolves. What the hell? And we'd try it out. But everybody in his group, there was like 9 of them, and the GM was like, he would say things. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff that was, what do you call it?
Canon or
Canon, yeah, part of the
yeah.
the what is it? The myth. And I was playing with Felipe, my brother, and we had no clue as to what that meant, right? They're like, oh, they're from this clan, or the not Bruja, that would be vampire. They're from the Knuckle Dragger clan or something. And I was like, oh man, and then like that meant something to us. It was like, okay, is that? It was funny because like me and Felipe looked at, okay, what are we gonna do? What's our mission? And there was no mission. We were just wandering around, goofing off and doing stuff. So I think in this case, a lot of story is just the players running the story, right? Playing the game, talking to each other, talking to NPCs, and a lot of the plot is generated at the table by just conversing with the players in character and seeing what they want to do, what their motivations are, and then the GM not gives it to them, but presents something for them to be able to deal with.
The play style for this kind of game is that players are really running it, right? The GM is there, but it's more like he's just presenting he's just presenting information, and the players go with it,
and
wherever they're going to go.
He's in charge of the world, or they're in charge of the world, and as the players saying, ask or say, where is this or where is that? How can I get this? The GM is there to fill the world.
And also to facilitate when the player says, this is what I'm doing. If
Right.
they need to roll a die,
yes,
then they're going to roll it. And he says, oh, okay.
And present obstacles and maybe goals that they may not think of. But in the end, the players are the ones that come up with stuff that they want to do. And the GM is just there to make sure that happens. Now, I'm not saying that the GM has to do exactly what the players want. Of course not. That wouldn't be very fun. He presents obstacles for those goals, right, that they want to accomplish. So, but the players are the ones that said, oh, I want to do this, or I want to go after this, or I want to become the head vampire of this clan or whatever.
And some of the games, Blades in the Dark is one of the ones that came out at this time, right? And
no, Blades in the Dark is 2000, but it's that kind of play style.
That kind of, yeah.
It's where the players are the ones who are dictating what they want to do, and it's very, like I said, it's very player driven. And some Monster of the Week is kind of like that because it's PBTA,
Powered by the Apocalypse.
Powered by Apocalypse is definitely this kind of game where the players are fully in charge of the game in certain sense as what they're going to do, where they're going to go, and the GM is there to facilitate that kind of play, right? If they want to go into the forest and rid the forest of every wolf that's in there, okay, go ahead and try. And then the GM will present obstacles to that or figure out a way to make that exciting and fun for them to try to do.
So Monster of the Week
is literally Monster of the Week.
It's literally, there's a monster, right?
Yes.
And so the GM would be presenting that, there was he won't say what it is, but say it's a ghoul is doing something around the town, and then the players are going to decide what they're going to do about it.
Well, it literally is like the TV show Supernatural. Right?
Yeah.
Supernatural, the two brothers, if you've ever seen the show, these two brothers rumble into town for whatever reason, sometimes by chance, sometimes on a lead, and there's a death or mysterious something or other. And they have to figure out, like you said, you got to figure out what it is.
What it is.
What do you say?
You got to figure out what it is. You got to figure out how to kill it.
And then you got to kill it.
And then you got to do it. That's me. But see, that's me. That's the way I would do it. I don't know. Powered by the Apocalypse, isn't it the one with the playbooks?
Yes.
So whoever you are is your character, or that's what you're gonna think about how you're going to do it.
Right.
Versus me, I would like, if you're playing Monster of the Week, for me, it would be more like I would probably want it to be a little more crunchy, like a supernatural one. But that's the idea.
Right, correct. A lot of these are based on other media, right? Like, for example,
Different genres, right?
well, other media, like we're talking the genre is like a time period, like gangster time, but what I mean media is like from books or from TV shows or from movies, like a caper, like Ocean's 11. A lot of games, some of these like Powered by Apocalypse or other games of this type they'll try to mimic a caper, right? They'll try to mimic a monster show like Monster of the Week, like let's say we're talking about Supernatural. That's where Monster. I don't know if I'm saying that, but that's where Monster of the Week comes from.
No,
but Monster of the Week is like that, throwing some.
where it's a different monster.
And I think Monster of the Week is the one where you play teenagers, isn't it? Teenage.
I don't remember if that's that one or Monster Hearts.
Oh, Monster Hearts. Yes, you are correct. I get my monsters RPGs mixed up. So you're right. So along with old games like World of Darkness, Vampire, and all those other ones, newer games that came out in the early 2000s, Powered by Apocalypse, Forged in the Dark, Blades in the Dark, and even a new one called The Wild Sea are this kind of player-driven role-playing games.
And then, because of all of these things that came out, that's when the old school revival,
Renaissance,
whatever you want to call it.
OSR. It's a kind of a trying to revert back to the 80s, right? But you have all this extra knowledge that you didn't have in the 80s.
Right.
So it's more like a fake 80s, or you're trying to mimic the 80s?
No, not really.
No?
I think what it is, the best thing I heard about, or when we talked about the OSR before, was that they played the original D&D, they played the old style games.
Right.
And then, but they know a lot more now. They take into consideration all of the different things going on, right? Storytelling and how the GM should adjudicate things.
Okay.
And then they go back and they go, oh, well, let's kind of put the rules into a better order.
Right.
And take out things that don't work, but then they want it to be a little more gritty, right? They don't want, they want you to be following the rules. They don't want, the story is all well, right? That's part of it, but they want the rules to be a certain way, or they want you to play a certain way.
Well, I think you're right. I think there was a lot of clarification on stuff. Original D&D and AD&D left a lot of questions out there about how things work and stuff like that. And some people back then would just like make the decision.
Yeah.
And whether they believed it was homebrew or they really thought that's what the rules were saying.
I just go back to the story about Traveler. When we were
Oh, yeah. I don't even remember what the
situation was, but there was a rule that
it was kind of ambiguous, right?
It was an ambiguous rule, and everybody goes, well, this is the way. There's two ways we can look at it. This is the way that Felipe decided it when we played a long time ago, and I wasn't there a long time ago.
I can't believe that somebody remembered that either.
And then Felipe came on too, because we were playing online, and Felipe came on and they said something about the rule, and he goes, no, this is the way we do it. And I go, I was thinking, well, that's a homebrew of the rule, maybe, or it's just that this is the interpretation, and this is the interpretation that we're going with. So OSR, that's what a lot of the times, for those ambiguous rules, this is the way they interpret it, and they put it in there. This is the way we interpret it.
Oh, yeah, they just clean up the rules a lot. And it's kind of homage to the 80s as much as trying to get back to it. Like some people,
you say the 80s, but I think it's more to the old games.
70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like that. So, and some people say, well, they're just trying to get back to playing the 70s and 80s. I'm like, no, because you can't go back, right? Because unless you specifically play those rules and are not affected by current ideas of gameplay or influenced by them, then you just go play those games. But the OSR, they incorporate things that we've learned about, one, writing rules, about explaining rules, and two, about rules that make more sense. And I think that's what OSR people are trying to do. Sure, they're trying to get the feeling of those games back then, but you cannot separate the fact that we've had 40, 50 years of D&D. And if you're trying to play D&D back then and come up with a new set of rules, it's not going to be a word for word or a reinterpretation of the 80s rules or 70s rules, but it's going to be a little bit of that, and you're going to be influenced by the latest ideas about role playing or the latest ideas about how rules and mechanics work. For example, the idea of advantage and disadvantage, right? Some people love that, right? Because it cuts away from all these pluses and minuses. And I know a lot of stuff that you would consider OSR that incorporates advantage and disadvantage in the game.
Well, because it's a great idea,
It
right?
is.
You roll 2 dice, and either if you have an advantage, you take the highest one, and if you have a disadvantage, you take the lowest one.
Right, and it just makes things a lot easier. And I think that kind of innovation is what I'm saying is hard to ignore when you're writing a OSR book or an OSR rules. Now, I've never written OSR rules or tried to, but I have quite a few OSR rule books in my library, and a lot of them do that. They have this idea of what it was to play in the 80s, and they love those rules, but then they have 40 years of playing or 30 years, there's 40 years of role-playing gaming going on, and they're going to be influenced by some of those new ideas that have come about.
And one of the things is a lot of the OSR games that I think you're talking about that you have go back to the idea of they don't want it to be too easy for the player. Right?
Yes.
It needs to be a more gritty system. You know, you shouldn't have 90 hit points or whatever. You should have 10. You should know that you could die at any time.
Well, for example, the idea that you roll your hit points, right, at the very beginning of your character creation. And if you're unlucky enough to roll low, you get stuck with that, right? I've read quite a few rules, OSR rules. I would say at least half of the rules that I've read say, no, you don't start off with 1 hit point or 2 hit points. You start off at your maximum or whatever your die type is.
Yeah.
Now, they're not going to you're not going to have like 14 or 15. You're going to have 6 or 7 or 8. But still, better than 1. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember rolling up a wizard that had literally 1 hit point, and I'm like, where, And at the time, I was very paranoid. Of course, I'd always throw my couple spells of magic missile, and then after that, I was hiding. It was just the way you played. So I think there's some components about OSR is that they challenge real world abilities of the player.
Right.
The player is the one who's coming up with all these ideas and how to defeat things and stuff. And it's not really based on the character. I mean, you could role play it that way, but I think the way we played it back then, you were really testing the ability of the player. For example, the Tomb of Horrors, right? Tomb of Horrors is a classic example of this killer dungeon where you're not really challenging the characters. You're challenging the players as to solve the puzzles and the problems or the situation.
The only problem is you don't know what the puzzle is until you accidentally step on the wrong step or something.
Well, I mean, we never really played that way, even back in the 80s and in the 70s. My brother never really played that way. A lot of it was because we never really bought modules. There wasn't a handy game store around, and
Expensive.
kind of expensive for our meager allowances and stuff. So we never learned that type of play. And we never went to conventions in that time when we were very young that people played that way. So my brother very quickly started making his own adventures, and his own adventures were based on books he'd read and stuff like that, fantasy books. And so it was a lot different than going into a dungeon, killing monsters, and going. Though we did do that, some of that. There was a lot of that too, but there was usually a reason behind it, and not this. Well, there's a dungeon.
Let's explore it.
Who made the dungeon? Yeah, we don't care about that. There's monsters there, gold there. Let's go get our stuff. Another one is they really try to not overburden the GM with rules, right? There's no rules. Usually they kind of scale back the number of rules, like skill checks and stuff like that is missing from OSR games because they don't want you to be rolling skills. They want you to solve the problem by explaining what you're doing or how you're doing it. And I think the famous line of OSR is rulings over rules.
Yeah.
So if that's your goal, then you're going to have less rules.
I think that comes from the idea, like in Pathfinder and some games, there's you roll to see your skill checks, right?
Yes.
And the idea in OSR is that in the original, you would tell the GM, this is what I want to do to open that door. And then he would tell you, okay, roll this.
Right.
Versus you're saying, well, I'm going to roll my skill check to see if I can do it. And then you kind of aren't really role playing it. You're just skill checking it, right?
Right.
You're not coming up with the idea to do it. You're just doing it.
I think what really bothers OSR people is like people who look down at their character sheet and going, okay, this is what I can do, right? And I think they're on to something, the OSR people, because what happens is when you look down at the character sheet, you see all these skills and things they can do. It kind of boxes the player's creativity as to this is all they can do.
Right.
A lot of people think that way. And instead of thinking, well, these are things I can do, and not look beyond what's written on the page. And that's why if you don't have any skills, you just have your attributes and stuff, you're like, well, I'm going to try to do this. And the GM makes the ruling, oh, that's probably based on your strength. You got to make whatever strength check, whatever that entails. And what it causes is the players to come up with stuff instead of just look down at the sheet going, okay, I'm going to climb that wall. And I'm rolling.
I think a lot of people like this style of play of the player coming up with what they want to do, and then you figure out what you need to roll to do it, right?
Yes.
To see if you did what you said you wanted to do.
Right. Well, for example, what is it? If you're playing D&D, or probably 3rd edition is more like it, because D&D 5th edition, they got rid of a lot of rules. But let's say, what is it? D&D 3rd edition, you wanted to climb a wall or do something. There was all these pluses and minuses and modifiers and stuff like that, and you could get bogged down on this number crunching stuff, and that number crunching stuff has nothing to do with role playing, right? It has to do with math, and it takes you the player out of the game, where instead the referee makes this ruling saying, well, okay, it's they might crunch the numbers in their own head or give you ideas, but it's something that the GM makes up on the spot, and it's quicker than looking up the rules or looking on this table of minus and pluses, and says, well, it's a slippery surface. You're trying to climb the wall. It's rocky. You get a -1 to your dexterity roll or your strength roll, whatever it is. And I think that kind of gameplay goes faster instead of people having to break open a book and read and look at the tables and figure out what they need to roll.
What's the next style?
Collaborative.
How many more styles do you have written down here?
3 more. Where are we at? Oh, my God. So collaborative, this is in between the narrative and traditional. I think it kind of burdened that. It kind of tries to straddle both those styles. It doesn't adhere to one or the other. It just kind of it's not covered by those. So in this case, the GM presents an interactive world where the players have a large part in the stories that are created. It's neither tactical or all narrative. It is the GM and the players are really working together to drive the story forward.
So what kind of games are collaborative?
Well, Numenera is a very collaborative game. A lot of times the world or the games are decided upon between the player and the GM. Fabula Ultima, which is a Japanese tabletop role-playing game, has this same element where the players and the GM sit down and they plot out what the world is going to be like, what the setting is going to be like, what the situation is going to be like. And that, I think that is the ultimate part of the collaboration. That's why it's collaborating between the GM and the players. Both sit down. The GM doesn't come with his book, a tome of information, and say, okay, what are you guys going to do? You guys are here. No, the game starts. It's like Dresden Files, right, where you make the city that you're going to be in. That's the way you're supposed to play. You're supposed to sit down, the player and the GM, and say, okay, what city do you guys want to play in? And then that decision is going to make, what are some elements of the city? And then you go on and build the city. You build the setting of where your players are going to be. What are like some villains or some bad things that can happen in this city? And you're literally making this whole world in a setting or like a session 0 between the players and a GM. And of course, this means that the GM has to like
Allow the players
allows the players, right? They has to take off those
the
power,
yeah.
the power of creating.
He has to share the power.
He has to share it, right? Or they have to share it. And I think this is interesting. This is very tough for me as a old grognard type of GM to have the players have so much say so in the game. I've hardly ever done it. I don't think I've ever done it. I played in games like that, but I've never run a game like this. I don't think I have.
You have Daggerheart written down there. Isn't that new?
Yeah, only because I'm not sure why I put Daggerheart down there. But Numenera definitely like that. And I don't have the game, but I have the PDF of Fabula Ultima, whatever it's called. But there's other games like that that Fate is also can be collaborative, where like especially Dresden Files, where you sit down and you make the world between you and the players.
I'm not sure that I've ever played in Numenera.
No, I don't think you have. That's
I mean, I don't know that I've
far future.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever played any game where the GM has asked me all these questions because I'm not sure about that.
It's an old style of playing, butting up against this new idea. The next one is Tactical Pathfinder, 4th edition D&D. Now these are games that are
Starfinder.
Starfinder. I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm sure the rules. I think Starfinder tried to get away from that real miniature tactical combat.
I don't know until you hit a space combat, because let me tell you, that was more tactical than Jolene was ready for.
Yeah. It was pretty.
Starfinder, I thought that would be the coolest thing. And then, because I liked Pathfinder, but when they brought out a grid and all these rules about space fighting, ships, and what you had to do, and how many grids you could go, I was really tired. But I was just like looking at it.
Again?
I let Felipe take over doing that, and I went.
You went Betty Bye.
Yeah.
So this is a classic grid style play where you can move a certain amount of spots. You have angles. You have all these lines of sight. Sometimes you have these abilities that you can do. Very rules heavy combat.
A lot of people like Pathfinder because of that. Like they got what do they call them? They're not skills. They're when you do your character, you get extra things like
actions.
No, some kind of traits or something where...
Oh, yeah, like feats?
Yes, that's it, feats. I know the boys loved Pathfinder because it gave them the ability to feel like they were in control of their character.
Right. Well, it made them really tough character. Same thing with 3rd edition. I mean, 3rd edition was definitely grid combat, bust out the squares and the miniatures and the other bad miniatures.
And then they start telling you how many feet you can... Are you 5 feet within... Can you backstab? Do you get to do an extra thing if he walks by you, and all kinds of things?
A new game that's kind of like this is this game called Lancer, which is a futuristic mech fighting game. It is huge. I have looked. I always think that the rules are amazing, but it has to be the background. The book is super thick and huge, and it's gotten a lot of allocates as to how good of a game it is, and about the art and this and that. But it is a tactical.
It's a tactical battle game, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, you still get a role play in it.
Of course, yeah.
It's I mean, in Pathfinder, you're still going on an adventure. It just becomes tactical when a battle happens, right?
Well, I always like the idea of Mech Warrior. There's a computer game called Mech Warrior. I love that game. I think it was Mech Warrior 2 is the one I played. And there's a miniature game called Battle something. Jesus, I forget. But anyway, there's a computer game, and then they made a role-playing game called Mech Warrior. And it is literally, you are a pilot in this mech, and there's 2 games. There's one where you're role-playing, and then as soon as you get into Mech Warrior combat, it becomes a miniature game. Right? So it's not something I really got into, but I like the idea of role-playing that the big robot dude, but then it becomes, it has to become this grid combat game. Battletech is the game. Battletech is a miniature role-playing game that Mech Warrior is based on. Anyway, big robots fighting each other, really cool, but it's very hard to role-play that in a certain sense and it not get bogged down into a tactical, even a miniature game. Because because I know this podcast I used to listen to. They really loved Mech BattleTech, whatever, and they played the role playing game. But as soon as the combat started, it became BattleTech. It was a full fledged miniature game. So which I'm sure you or most of the people in my group would not be into.
I don't mind Pathfinder, that kind of tactical, right?
Right.
But I'm not sure. It depends on how long this miniature part is going to last.
Take hours.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
Do you want a battle to last that long?
No. The next step, I don't want to spend that much time. The next step is GM-less. Now, I don't have that much experience with GM-less games. They are usually they're what is it?
You say that, but we've played 2 GM-less games.
Oh, that's true.
And
there is the large,
and neither one of them was really. Well, the second one, the Lindworm one.
That's the one we didn't like.
Well, you didn't like.
Oh, I didn't like.
But it was supposed to be GM-less, but the only reason it worked for us is that Bay and Morgan sat down and put down everything.
Read the
rules. and no, they made a little chart. Yeah, they facilitated it. Definitely. So GM-less doesn't mean there's not a GM. It just means that there's a person that helps to facilitate it either before you start or there was the other one because we were in like a spaceship or Bay ran it. It was GM-less.
I don't remember that one.
It was during the pandemic.
Oh, well, I don't remember. But you're right. GM-less, it could mean that there's no GM. It could be that there's a facilitator. There was a real popular one. I forgot the name of it. Man, I got to write this stuff down. So anyway, a lot of times if there is a facilitator, that's kind of like a GM, right? There's somebody who helps the game roll forward or move forward. And de facto, you could become a GM in that kind of game. Now, other ones are much better at not having a GM at all.
What's the one when you're in like on a grid in a forest and you're creating it as you go, or
don't remember. GM-less can mean even GM-less is kind of like a what is it? There's a variety. There's ones that are need a facilitator. They play the role of a GM, and then you get more to the place where there's really no need for a GM or a facilitator, and you are just all of you playing around the table. For example, there's games like 10 Candles, which doesn't need a facilitator at all. There's a game like Alice is Missing. That one's kind of a strange one because all communication is done over text. You guys are just texting each other because Alice is missing, and you're trying to figure out where she went, or what happened to her, and that's all done through text. There's some cards you play at the table, but there's absolutely no need for a GM. And then you have solo games where there's no GM, and it's like pick your own adventure type of games,
which are very hard. I mean,
you played in one.
I did.
I believe it's called.
Oh, I don't know. It was the Call of Cthulhu one. Was Shannon sent it to me? He goes, "Okay, play this so you understand." And
how fragile you are.
It didn't matter which choice I made in that game. Someone's going to die. Most likely me.
Yeah. So it was like to choose your own adventure game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those have been really popular. Most games now, for whatever reason, maybe there's a lot of solo players out there. Traditional role playing games, they're trying to make those games have a solo variant. For example, the One Ring has the Strider variant where you play the One Ring as a solo game. And there's other games that are not meant to be played solo, but because there's kind of a demand for it, they have a solo variant of that game.
I saw that there was a Star Trek.
Now that's slightly different and that's an interesting one. I really like the idea. I don't know how much I really like it, but it sounds good to me. And that's a journaling type of game, right? Where you basically write in a journal, you're writing letters, and that's the way it works. And it's called the Captain's Log. Star Trek Captain's Log is the game you're talking about, where, of course, you're presented with all kinds of decisions to make, and there's the classic of follow your own adventure tree. But then you have to write down stuff for whatever reason. And then later on, you use that information you wrote down to help you solve the situation that you're in. So I think that's very interesting. I don't know how much. I mean, I've never I like the idea of this journaling thing, but I don't know how much enjoyment I would get for the amount of time I would be
It would seem like homework to me. You got to journal it. I mean,
and another thing is unless you write in some sort of crazy ink, once you wrote out, unless you write it like on a different piece of paper and not into the book,
you would want to write it on it, like have a little journal,
like literally
next
a
to you.
different journal.
Yeah.
I always thought that they would give you space inside the rule book to write stuff down, but maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to buy it and then write in it and then mess it up. You're right. This just seems more like a creative writing assignment
Yeah.
than an actual game. But I think depending on the skill of the game writer in this case, it could be a fun game. I don't know. I mean, you don't think it'd be fun?
I think the choose your own adventure one is
More fun.
I'm not so sure. I mean, journaling to me seems like a
task.
or you're trying to work through something, right?
Oh. Well, probably. You're trying to work through the Star Trek man, trying to get rid of the Gorn who are infesting your ship. I don't know. I don't know what the Captain's Log game is like. I've seen it. It looked interesting. I never bought it. I think it's like $25 because it's a little digest book.
So these are just different kinds of styles of play styles, right?
Right. And the whole point of this is that you want everybody to more or less be on the same page as far as the play style, right?
So when you get down to a solo game, you should be on the same page with yourself, right?
But you may not like the journaling because you've seen.
I wouldn't pick that one though. I would pick like I know there's games where you can play by yourself. You can roll with the tables,
right?
And
then you roll against.
I'd have to be really bored to do that because there's no interaction there other than in my brain, and I could just read a book. But a lot of people, I know, like if you're stuck somewhere where you don't have your group of friends or something, you might want to do that.
So I think there's different reasons for this, but ultimately, you're right. Except for the GM list, except for the single player game, solo game variants, I think if everybody more or less is in the same style or has the same idea when you're going into the game and sitting at the table, then I think you have a better chance of that party cohesion and player cohesion, right? You're not going to piss off the tactical guy because you guys just want to play this long soliloquy between each other about the goings on in the world.
So you should
that guy
really
wants to get in a fight and kill things and have these. And another player's like, no, why are we going to do that? Let's discuss this.
So you should know the people you're playing with, basically.
Well, even people sometimes will go into they'll have like a different idea of what the game is going to be about.
Right.
Right. Like even within our groups that we play in, of different people, some people may have a hankering to play Traveler, and other people have no desire to play Traveler. Right. Other people may have a desire to play more like Root, this more carefree type of game where we decide what we want to do, where we want to do it, and stuff like that. And then other people want to play a tactical D&D game where they make decisions in battle, and that's what it's about. So that's why I decided that this would be a good a topic for the podcast, because I think ultimately people want to have, well, if you want to play a longer campaign or longer series of games, you should go into the game with kind of like the same mentality.
Right. So talk to your players and say, do you want to play this? This is what this game is like.
Right. Because some people might assume something that's not true. Right. Or like, oh, this is going to be a tactical
If we're going to play Pathfinder, when we get to the battle, it's going to take an hour. Is everybody okay with that?
Somebody might say, oh, we're going to play Pathfinder. Like, all right. And, you build up your character. And then when you get to combat, the person goes, okay, we're just going to make a couple rolls and then go on and forget about the combat.
Oh.
Right? They could.
They wouldn't like
the
that.
GM
I wouldn't like that.
The GM goes, you know what? I really don't like the combat aspects of this game. We're going to just say, you guys defeated because you guys are more powerful than the enemy. If it gets close, then we could do a couple rolls here and there.
I don't even like that. I don't even like that. And I'm not a combat, let's just take one step at a time combat person.
But it could happen. Or the other way around, right? You're expecting this like loosey-goosey game where you're just
and then you end up in
people's feelings, and then you're playing Vampire the Masquerade, and all of a sudden you go, okay, we're going into a battle mode, and they're like, oh, what do you mean battle mode? And then you have people, you start bringing out miniatures and a grid, and you're like, what the heck is going on? You're right. There's expectations, and then there's breaking of those expectations.
So there you go.
There you go.
Kind of know what your players want to play
And discuss it.
This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul,
and Jolene.
and you have a good day.